She never thought betrayal would taste like champagne and wedding cake. Standing alone in the corner of the grand ballroom, Kira Tyler watched the man she'd almost married dance with the woman he'd chosen instead. Every smile, every whispered word between them was a knife to her chest. The guests whispered. They pitied her. They mocked her. Then, a shadow fell across her. A voice dark as midnight, rough as gravel. Pathetic, isn't it? How they celebrate cruelty and call it love. She looked up, and there he was. Noah Tucker, the Duke everyone feared, the man whose very presence made nobles tremble. His eyes burned into hers with something between fury and fascination. You have two choices, he said, leaning closer until his breath warmed her ear. Continue being their entertainment for the evening, or walk with me, and watch them tremble. Her heart stopped, her breath caught, and for the first time in months, Kira Tyler chose herself. If you love stories of revenge, redemption, and forbidden romance, subscribe now. Don't miss our next emotional journey. Hit that notification bell and join our Sure Romance family. When Kira Tyler receives an invitation to her ex-fiance's wedding, 3 weeks after he abandoned her for a wealthier woman, she knows attending is social suicide. But pride and foolish hope bring her anyway. What she doesn't expect is to catch the attention of Noah Tucker, the Duke of Ashford, a man whose ruthless reputation precedes him. Noah has his own reasons for attending this wedding, and when he sees Kira standing alone, humiliated, something inside him breaks, or perhaps awakens. What begins as a calculated rescue becomes something neither expected, a partnership built on shared wounds, mutual attraction, and a dangerous plan to show society that neither of them needs anyone's approval. But Noah is hiding secrets that could destroy them both. And Kira is about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't falling in love with a duke. It's discovering he's been in love with you all along. The invitation had been a mistake. Kira knew it the moment her maid's trembling hands had delivered the cream envelope, sealed with Tom Fry's family crest, a mockery of elegance pressed into bloodied wax. She knew it when her mother had begged her not to attend. She knew it when Eleanor, her dearest friend, had stared at her with a mixture of horror and admiration and said, "If you go, you're either the bravest woman in London or the biggest fool." Perhaps she was both. The Cathedral of St. Martin stood like a monument to everything Kira had lost. Gothic spires pierced the gray November sky, and inside, London's elite assembled to witness Tom's marriage to Georgiana Whitmore, shipping heiress, diamond of the season, and the woman who had stolen Kira's future with the casual cruelty of someone selecting gloves. Kira's fingers trembled as she smoothed the sapphire silk of her dress, a gown she'd commissioned for her own wedding. The irony wasn't lost on her. Neither, apparently, was it lost on anyone else. "My word, is that Kira Tyler?" The whisper came from Lady Ashworth, whose fan worked overtime. "The audacity," someone else hissed. "After what happened? Well, one must admire her courage, or pity her desperation." Kira lifted her chin higher. She'd perfected the art of pretending not to hear, of transforming humiliation into armor. 3 months. It had been 3 months since Tom had stood in her family's modest parlor and explained with agonizing politeness that circumstances had changed. Circumstances. What a bloodless word for betrayal. His father's investments failed, Tom had said, his eyes unable to meet hers. That is, my family needs money. Kira had finished for him, her voice hollow. You need money more than you need me. He hadn't denied it. That perhaps was the only honest thing he'd done. The ceremony was beautiful, torturously so. Georgiana glided down the aisle in ivory lace and seed pearls, her blonde perfection a stark contrast to Kira's darker coloring. Tom waited at the altar, handsome in his morning coat, his expression one of relief rather than love. Kira sat in the back pew alone. Eleanor had offered to accompany her, but Kira had refused. This humiliation was hers to bear in solitude. As the priest intoned the sacred vows, Kira's vision blurred. Not with tears she'd spent those weeks ago, but with the strange detachment of watching her life become someone else's happy ending. If anyone objects to this union, Speak now or forever hold your peace. For one wild, reckless moment, Kira considered standing, considered shouting, considered. The moment passed. I now pronounce you husband and wife. And just like that, it was over. The reception at the Whitmore estate was an exercise in elegant cruelty. The ballroom blazed with 1,000 candles, their light reflecting off crystal champagne flutes and the diamonds adorning London's finest throats. An orchestra played Mozart. Servants in livery circulated with silver trays. Everything was perfect. Except for Kira, sitting alone at a table in the corner, nursing lukewarm champagne and trying to become invisible. Miss Tyler, Georgiana appeared beside her table, resplendent in her wedding gown, her smile sharp as glass. How unexpected to see you here. Kira met her gaze steadily. I was invited. By mistake, surely. Georgiana's laugh was delicate, musical, and utterly poisonous. Tom was quite clear that you weren't on the guest list. How did you manage to slip in? Bribery? Forgery? Heat flooded Kira's face. Around them, conversations had died. Everyone was listening now, watching this public execution. I received an invitation with my name on it, Kira said quietly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I assumed it was a gesture of goodwill, Georgiana interrupted. Dear girl, we have no goodwill for you. You're the embarrassing reminder of what Tom settled for before he met me. A solicitor's daughter with nothing to offer but mediocrity. She leaned closer, her perfume cloying. Do yourself a favor, Miss Tyler. Leave before you humiliate yourself further. The ballroom spun. Every eye was on her now. Lady Ashworth's fan had stopped moving entirely. The orchestra had fallen silent. Even the servants had paused to watch. Kira stood, her legs somehow supporting her, despite the roaring in her ears. She would not cry. She would not give them the satisfaction. You're right, she heard herself say. Her voice surprisingly clear. I should never have come. She turned toward the exit, her vision tunneling, every step an eternity. Behind her she heard Georgiana's triumphant laugh, heard the whispers exploding like fireworks. Poor thing. Completely delusional. I heard she was obsessed with him. Pathetic, really. Kira had almost reached the door when a figure stepped into her path. She looked up and up. Noah Tucker stood before her, 6 feet of aristocratic menace wrapped in a perfectly tailored black evening coat. His face was all sharp angles and contained fury, his gray eyes the color of storm clouds. Pathetic, he said, his voice pitched to carry across the suddenly silent ballroom. Isn't it? Kira blinked, confused. Was he mocking her too? But Noah wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the assembled guests with unconcealed contempt. How they celebrate cruelty and call it love, he continued, his accent crisp and cutting. How they watch a woman be humiliated and call it entertainment. How they preen and gossip and pretend to be civilized while behaving like animals. Lady Ashworth gasped. Lord Pemberton sputtered into his champagne. Noah's attention swung back to Kira, and the fury in his eyes softened infinitesimally. You have 2 choices, Miss Tyler, he said, his voice dropping to something intimate, dangerous. Continue being their entertainment for the evening, or walk with me and watch them tremble. He extended his hand. Kira stared at it, her mind reeling. She knew who Noah Tucker was. Everyone knew. The Duke of Ashford, one of the wealthiest men in England, with a reputation for destroying anyone who crossed him. They said he'd ruined 3 titled families over business disputes. They said he never smiled. They said he collected enemies the way other men collected art, and he was offering her his hand. Wakira, Kira whispered. Because, Noah said, his gray eyes burning into hers, I've always had a weakness for lost causes, and because right now you look like you want to burn this entire ballroom to the ground. I find that admirable. Behind them, Tom had pushed through the crowd. Your Grace, I must apologize for this disruption. Miss Tyler was leaving. Miss Tyler is doing no such thing, Noah said without looking at him. His eyes never left Kira's face. Unless she chooses to. The choice is always hers. The choice is always hers. Those 5 words cracked something open in Kira's chest. She placed her hand in Noah's. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and impossibly certain. Wise choice, what he murmured, then raised his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I do hope you'll forgive me for stealing the most interesting person at this tedious affair. He tucked Kira's hand into the crook of his elbow and began walking, not toward the exit, but directly through the center of the ballroom, forcing the crowd to part around them like water around a ship's prow. Kira's heart hammered against her ribs. Every eye followed them. She could feel the weight of their shock, their speculation, their envy. As they passed the head table where Tom and Georgiana stood frozen, Noah paused just long enough to say in a voice dripping with aristocratic disdain, "Lovely ceremony. Though I've attended funerals with more warmth, best wishes on your joyless marriage." Georgiana's face went pale. Tom looked like he might be ill. And then they were through the crowd, out into the corridor, and Kira could finally breathe again. She pulled her hand free, her chest heaving. "What did you just do?" "I believe," Noah said calmly, adjusting his cufflinks. "I rescued you. You're welcome." "I didn't ask to be rescued." "No, you asked to be humiliated. I thought this was an improvement." His gray eyes studied her with unnerving intensity. "Was I wrong?" Kira opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because he wasn't wrong, and that was almost worse than everything else. "Why?" she asked again, desperate to understand. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Something flickered across Noah's face, there and gone too quickly to identify. "Don't I?" he said softly, then seemed to catch himself. His expression shuddered. "Let's say I have my reasons. Now you have another choice to make, Miss Tyler. You can return to that ballroom and face them, or you can let me take you home, away from this circus. If I leave with you, the gossip will be worse than if I just left alone. If you leave with me," Noah corrected, "the gossip will be about me pursuing you, not about you being pathetic. There's a significant difference." "You do that? Let them think—" "Miss Tyler," Noah interrupted, his voice gentler than she'd expected. "By tomorrow morning, half of London will believe I'm courting you. The other half will believe we're already lovers. Either way, no one will pity you anymore. They'll envy you instead." Kira's breath caught. That's social manipulation." "Yes," Noah agreed, unapologetic. "I'm quite good at it. So I'll ask you one final time. Do you want to go home and nurse your wounds in private? Or do you want to let me turn you from the evening's victim into its most talked about woman?" Kira looked back toward the ballroom, where she could still hear the buzz of shocked conversation. She thought about Tom's face, pale with horror, about Georgiana's fury, about every guest who had watched her humiliation with gleeful anticipation. Then she looked at Noah Tucker, this dangerous, impossible duke who had stepped into her disaster for reasons she couldn't begin to understand. "I want them to tremble," she heard herself say. Noah's smile was slow, dangerous, and absolutely devastating. "Then we understand each other perfectly." Noah's carriage was everything Kira had imagined a duke's conveyance would be: plush velvet seats, polished mahogany trim, and the family crest emblazoned on the door in gold leaf. It was also, she realized as he handed her inside, a trap. Once the door closed and the carriage began moving, she was alone with a man she didn't know, whose reputation suggested he ate innocence for breakfast. "Relax," Noah said, settling onto the opposite seat with the ease of a predator confident in his domain. "I'm not going to ravish you." Heat flooded Kira's face. "I never thought—" "You were thinking about it." His gray eyes caught the lamplight streaming through the windows. "You're wondering what the notorious Duke of Ashford wants with a nobody solicitor's daughter. You're wondering if this is some elaborate game. You're wondering if I'm worse than the humiliation you just left." He was right. Kira hated that he was right. "So," she said, forcing steel into her voice, "what do you want?" Noah leaned back, studying her with unnerving focus. "The truth or the pretty lie?" "I've had enough pretty lies to last a lifetime." "Fair enough." He pulled a silver flask from his coat pocket, took a drink, then offered it to her. When she shook her head, he continued, "I want to make London society deeply uncomfortable. And you, Miss Tyler, are the perfect weapon for that particular war." "I'm a weapon now?" "You're a scandal waiting to happen. The jilted woman who caught a duke's attention. The nobody who somehow enthralled one of England's most eligible bachelors. His smile was sharp. Do you know how rare that is? How impossible? Every mama in London has been throwing their daughters at me for a decade. I've ignored them all. But you, he gestured vaguely, you I publicly claimed in front of 200 witnesses. Kira's mind reeled. This is insane. You don't even know me. Why would you? Because, Noah interrupted, his voice losing some of its calculated edge. 3 years ago, I stood in a church very much like that cathedral and watched the woman I loved marry another man. For money, for a title higher than mine, for everything except love. Silence filled the carriage. Outside, London streets rattled past, but inside, time seemed suspended. Her name was Isabel, Noah continued, his eyes distant. We were childhood friends. I thought, well, it doesn't matter what I thought. The point is, I understand what it feels like to be discarded, to be deemed insufficient, to watch your future walk away with someone else. Then you know how much it hurts, Kira said softly. Oh yes, Noah's laugh was bitter. I know. And I also know that the best revenge isn't tears or anger. It's becoming so spectacularly successful that your replacement looks like the consolation prize. You want revenge? I want to make them uncomfortable, to show them that their rules and their judgments are meaningless, that the woman they pitied yesterday becomes the diamond of tomorrow simply because I say so. He leaned forward, his intensity palpable. Help me prove that, Miss Tyler. Let me tell you about London. Not as the jilted woman, but as the mysterious lady who captured the uncapturable Duke. That's madness, perhaps, but it's also an opportunity. You can return to your life and spend the next year dodging pitying looks and whispered gossip. Or you can let me transform you into something they can't touch, something they'll envy and fear in equal measure. And what do you get out of this? Noah's smile turned predatory. Entertainment. Revenge. The satisfaction of watching the same people who mocked you scramble to ingratiate themselves with you. And perhaps, he paused, something vulnerable flickering in his expression, perhaps the satisfaction of saving someone else from the fate I couldn't escape. Kira studied him, trying to see past the calculated charm to the man beneath. She saw pain there, carefully hidden, but unmistakable. She saw fury, cold and controlled. And she saw something else, a kind of desperate hope that he'd probably deny if confronted. What would this arrangement entail? She heard herself ask. Appearances, Noah said promptly, businesslike again. We'll be seen together at key social events. I'll escort you to the opera, to soirees, to races at Ascot. I'll dance with you, speak with you, and generally behave as though you're the most fascinating woman I've ever met. And in private? In private, we can be honest with each other. No pretense, no games. His gray eyes held hers. I don't want your affection, Miss Tyler. I want your cooperation. Be my partner in this performance, and I'll give you back your dignity. You'll be able to walk into any ballroom in London with your head high. It was manipulation, pure and simple. Kira knew that, but it was also tempting. So tempting. How long would this last? She asked. The season? 4 months. By then, the gossip will have established you as my particular interest. When we part ways amicably, you'll be the woman who held Noah Tucker's attention for an entire season. That's a better legacy than poor jilted Kira, don't you think? And if I refuse? Noah shrugged. Then I'll have my driver take you home, and we'll both forget this conversation ever happened. You'll go back to your life, I'll go back to mine, and Tom and Georgiana will continue to be the victors in your story. Tom and Georgiana, the victors. The words ignited something in Kira's chest, something dangerous and reckless and utterly unlike her careful, proper self. 4 months, she said slowly, and then we part amicably. 4 months, Noah confirmed. No expectations beyond public appearances? None whatsoever. And if I change my mind, you're free to leave at any time. No questions asked. Noah extended his hand. Do we have an agreement, Miss Tyler? Kira looked at his outstretched hand. This was reckless, possibly ruinous, definitely dangerous. She took his hand and shook firmly. We have an agreement, Your Grace. Noah's smile transformed his face, making him look younger, less hardened. Then starting tomorrow, please call me Noah. If we're going to convince London we're enamored, you should probably use my given name. Noah. Kira tested the name on her tongue. It felt strange, intimate. And I'll call you Kira if you'll permit it. I suppose that's acceptable. Excellent. Noah released her hand and leaned back, looking enormously pleased with himself. Now, let's discuss strategy. Tomorrow morning, I'll send flowers to your home. Roses, 3 dozen of them, expensive and ostentatious enough that your neighbors will notice. Won't that be too obvious? Obviously, this is the point. We want people talking. His eyes gleamed with mischief. Then tomorrow evening, I'll call on you formally. We'll take a very public drive through Hyde Park during the fashionable hour. By sunset, half of London will have seen us together. And the other half will have heard about it, Kira murmured, beginning to understand his strategy. Precisely. Within 3 days, the story will shift from poor Kira was jilted to mysterious Kira has captured the Duke of Ashford. The narrative changes completely. You've done this before, Kira said, not entirely a question. Social manipulation? It's practically an art form in our circles. Noah's expression darkened slightly. I learned young that reputation is everything, and that if you can't control people's actions, you can at least control their perceptions. That's rather cynical. That's rather honest, Noah corrected. The ton is built on perception and pretense. We simply use their own weapons against them. The carriage slowed, and Kira realized they'd reached her family's modest townhouse in an unfashionable corner of Bloomsbury. It was a far cry from the grand estates of Mayfair, and she felt a sudden flush of embarrassment. Noah noticed. Of course he noticed. Don't, he said quietly. Don't what? Don't diminish yourself. Your home doesn't define your worth any more than Tom's rejection did. He pushed open the carriage door and stepped out, then offered his hand to help her down. Remember, Kira, you're not the woman who was left behind. You're the woman who caught a duke's attention. Act like it. He was right. She hated how right he was. As Noah escorted her to her door, Kira noticed curtains twitching in neighboring windows. Already the gossip was starting. At her doorstep, Noah lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture formal enough to be proper but intimate enough to fuel speculation. Until tomorrow, Kira, he said, his gray eyes holding secrets she couldn't read. Until tomorrow, she echoed. She watched his carriage disappear into the London night, her heart racing, her mind spinning with the impossible thing she'd just agreed to. Inside, Eleanor was waiting, practically vibrating with curiosity. Tell me everything, Eleanor demanded the moment Kira closed the door. What did the Duke want? Why did he? Kira, why are you smiling? Kira touched her face, surprised to find Eleanor was right. She was smiling. For the first time in 3 months, she was genuinely smiling. I think, she said slowly, I just declared war on London society. Eleanor's eyes widened. Oh, this is going to be spectacular. True to his word, Noah sent roses. 3 dozen of them arrived at precisely 10 o'clock the following morning, delivered by a footman in the Ashford livery and accompanied by a card that read simply, Until this evening, N. Kira's mother nearly fainted. The Duke of Ashford? Mrs. Tyler clutched the card like it might bite her. Kira, what have you done? I attended a wedding, Mother. The Duke offered to escort me home. That's all. That's all? Her mother's voice rose an octave. Child, dukes do not send 3 dozen roses because of a carriage ride. What happened at that wedding? Kira thought about Georgiana's cruelty, about Tom's pale face, about Noah's devastating rescue. I made a new acquaintance. An acquaintance who sent enough flowers to stock a greenhouse. Mrs. Tyler sank into her chair, fanning herself. The entire neighborhood will have seen them delivered. Kira, do you understand what this means? The gossip will be about the Duke pursuing me, Kira finished, echoing Noah's words. Not about Tom leaving me. Isn't that an improvement? Mrs. Tyler opened her mouth, closed it, then studied her daughter with new intensity. You've changed. I've been humiliated publicly. It tends to alter one's perspective. No, her mother shook her head. This is different. You're harder, sharper. Perhaps I needed to be. Mrs. Tyler started to respond, but a knock at the door interrupted them. Their elderly maid, Mrs. Higgins, appeared, flustered and wide-eyed. Miss Kira, that is, you have callers, multiple callers. They're waiting in the parlor, and I didn't know whether to... Callers? Kira's pulse quickened. She'd barely had any visitors since the broken engagement. Who? Lady Ashworth, Miss Pemberton, and Lady Helena Tucker. The Duke's mother. Kira's stomach dropped. The Duke's mother is here? Now? She insisted on waiting for you. Mrs. Higgins wrung her hands. I didn't know what to do. They saw the roses, miss. Everyone saw the roses. This was happening too fast. Noah had said tomorrow evening for the Hyde Park Drive. She wasn't prepared for... Stop panicking. Eleanor's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Her friend had materialized at her elbow, dressed in a practical morning gown and looking far more composed than Kira felt. This is perfect. Perfect? Eleanor, the Duke's mother, is here to assess you, which means the plan is already working. Eleanor smoothed Kira's hair, adjusted her shawl, and propelled her toward the parlor. Remember what the Duke said. You're not the jilted woman, you're the woman who caught his attention. Now go prove it. The parlor seemed too small for the three women assembled there. Lady Ashworth perched on the settee like a bird of prey, her sharp eyes cataloging every detail of the modest room. Miss Pemberton, a shy, mousy girl Kira barely knew, hovered near the window looking uncomfortable. And Lady Helena Tucker? The Duke's mother was magnificent. She sat in the worn armchair like it was a throne, her silver hair elegantly coiffed, her blue silk morning dress perfectly tailored, her bearing regal despite the shabby surroundings. When Kira entered, those gray eyes, so like her son's, fixed on her with penetrating intelligence. Miss Tyler, Lady Helena said, her voice cultured and warm. How kind of you to receive us on such short notice. Lady Helena, I'm honored. Kira curtsied, then turned to the others. Lady Ashworth, Miss Pemberton. What a pleasant surprise. Pleasant, Lady Ashworth's fans snapped open. My dear girl, all of London is abuzz. You were seen leaving the Whitmore reception with my son yesterday. And then those roses arrived this morning. She leaned forward conspiratorially. We simply must know. Are the rumors true? What rumors? Kira asked carefully. That my son has developed a particular interest in you. Lady Helena's expression was impossible to read. This was the moment. Kira could deny everything, could claim it was a misunderstanding, could retreat back into obscurity. Or she could do what Noah had asked. She could perform. Kira lifted her chin and met Lady Helena's gaze directly. His Grace was kind enough to offer me his escort home from what had been rather an unpleasant evening. If that kindness has led to speculation, I can hardly control what others choose to believe. Unpleasant, Miss Pemberton whispered. Because of Mr. Fry? The room fell silent. Everyone knew. Of course, everyone knew. That was the point. Mr. Fry made his choices, Kira said calmly, though her hands trembled slightly. As have I, Lady Ashworth's eyes gleamed. And do your choices include accepting my son's attention? That depends, Kira said, gambling everything on Noah's promise, on what his Grace's intentions are. His intentions, Lady Helena said softly, are his own business. But I will say this, Miss Tyler. My son has not shown interest in anyone since, well, in quite some time. If he's chosen to pursue you, there must be a reason. It wasn't quite approval, but it wasn't condemnation either. Your son is a remarkable man, Kira said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. Any woman would be fortunate to receive his regard. Any woman, Lady Helena stood, and the others immediately followed suit. Yes, but Noah doesn't choose just any woman. He chooses carefully, deliberately. She crossed to Kira and studied her face intently. Tell me, Miss Tyler, what did my son see in you that convinced him you were worth the scandal this will cause? The question hung in the air, loaded with meaning. Kira thought about Noah's eyes in the carriage, about his confession regarding Isabel, about the carefully hidden pain beneath his calculating exterior. Perhaps, she said slowly, He saw someone who understands what it means to be discarded, someone who wouldn't judge him for being imperfect, someone who might be brave enough to stand beside him even when society disapproves. Lady Helena's expression softened imperceptibly. A wise answer. I begin to see why he's interested. She moved toward the door, and the other women followed like trailing satellites. Expect him this evening, Lady Helena said as she departed. He mentioned something about Hyde Park. Do wear something appropriate. The fashionable hour is always well attended. After they left, Kira sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unreliable. That, Eleanor said from the doorway, was magnificent. You were magnificent. I was terrified. They couldn't tell, Eleanor grinned. Lady Helena practically gave you her blessing. And did you see Lady Ashworth? She's already planning your wedding, I'd wager. Don't. Kira's voice came out sharper than intended. This isn't real, Eleanor. It's a performance. 4 months and then Noah and I part ways. You call him Noah now? Heat flooded Kira's face. It's part of the arrangement. We have to seem familiar. Right. An arrangement. Eleanor's expression suggested she wasn't convinced, but she didn't push. So what are you going to wear to Hyde Park? Kira looked down at her modest morning dress, then at the equally modest gowns hanging in her wardrobe. Nothing she owned was appropriate for being seen with a duke. I have no idea, she admitted. Eleanor's smile turned wicked. Then we'd better go shopping. If you're going to convince London you have captured a duke, you'll need to look the part. Noah arrived at precisely 5 o'clock, driving an elegant phaeton drawn by matched grays that probably cost more than Kira's house. He descended with fluid grace, his dark green coat emphasizing his broad shoulders, his expression carefully neutral until he saw her. Then something flickered in those gray eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or approval. Eleanor and the dressmaker had worked miracles in the intervening hours. Kira wore a walking dress of deep rose silk with cream trim, a Spencer jacket that emphasized her figure, and a bonnet that managed to be both fashionable and flattering. She felt like an imposter playing at being a lady, but when Noah's eyes lit with genuine appreciation, some of that insecurity melted away. Miss Tyler, he said, bowing over her hand, you look stunning. Thank you, Your Grace. She kept her voice formal for the benefit of the neighborhood audience. Already curtains were twitching, and Mrs. Patterson from next door had conveniently chosen this moment to water her window boxes. Noah, he corrected softly for her ears only. Then louder, shall we? I've been looking forward to this all day. He handed her up into the phaeton, and Kira was acutely aware of the warmth of his palm, the strength of his fingers. This was all pretense, she reminded herself, a performance, but it felt dangerously real. As they drove toward Hyde Park, Noah kept up a steady stream of polite conversation about the weather, about London's streets, about nothing of consequence. Anyone listening would have heard two people engaged in perfectly proper discourse. But there was something in his tone, in the way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching, that suggested layers beneath the surface. Nervous? He murmured as they approached the park gates. Terrified, Kira admitted. Good, use it. Fear and excitement looked the same from the outside. He guided the horses expertly through the entrance. And remember, you have nothing to apologize for. You're exactly where you belong. Hyde Park during the fashionable hour was a parade of London's elite. Carriages moved at a sedate pace along Rotten Row, allowing occupants to see and be seen. Ladies in their finest dresses strolled the paths. Gentlemen on horseback cut elegant figures against the manicured landscape. And everyone, absolutely everyone, noticed when the Duke of Ashford arrived with Kira Tyler at his side. The whispers started immediately. Is that? Good heavens, it is. The jilted Tyler girl with the Duke? How on earth did she manage that? Noah seemed oblivious to the gossip, or rather he appeared oblivious while being perfectly aware. He kept his attention focused on Kira, asking her opinion on trivial matters, laughing at her comments, generally behaving as though she was the only person in the park worth his time. You're an excellent actor, Kira murmured when they paused to let another carriage pass. I'm not acting, Noah said, and something in his tone made her look at him sharply. Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut through the afternoon air. Your Grace, what an unexpected pleasure. Georgiana Whitmore rode toward them on a stunning bay mare, her riding habit perfectly tailored, her blonde hair artfully arranged. Tom rode beside her on a less impressive gelding, his expression carefully blank. Kira's stomach clenched. She wasn't ready for this confrontation. Wasn't prepared to... Noah's hand found hers on the seat between them, hidden from view, but steady and reassuring. Steady, he murmured. Remember who has the power here. Mrs. Fry, Noah said coolly as the couple drew alongside. And Mr. Fry, enjoying married life, I trust? Very much, Your Grace. Georgiana's smile was sharp as she looked at Kira. Miss Tyler, how surprising to see you here, with His Grace, after yesterday's unfortunate scene. I found yesterday's scene quite fortunate, Noah said before Kira could respond. It allowed me to make Miss Tyler's acquaintance, something I've been meaning to do for quite some time. Tom's head snapped up. You knew Kira. Not as well as I'd like, Noah said smoothly, but I've been aware of her for several years. Her father and mine had business dealings before his passing. I've always admired the Tyler family's integrity. He paused meaningfully. A quality sadly lacking in many titled families, wouldn't you say? The insult was subtle but unmistakable. Tom flushed. Georgiana's smile hardened. How fascinating, Georgiana said through clenched teeth. I wasn't aware Miss Tyler's family moved in ducal circles. They didn't need to move in those circles to be worthy of them, Noah replied, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Unlike some who mistake wealth for breeding and cruelty for sophistication. Georgiana gasped. Tom looked murderous, but Noah was already guiding the horses forward, dismissing them as utterly as if they'd ceased to exist. Well, Kira breathed once they were out of earshot. That was satisfying, Noah supplied. I was going to say terrifying. They'll all hate me now. They hated you yesterday. At least now they also fear you. He glanced at her, his expression softening. How do you feel? Kira considered the question. She felt powerful. For the first time since Tom had ended their engagement, she felt like she had agency, like she mattered. I feel, she said slowly, like perhaps you were right. Revenge does taste rather sweet. Noah's smile was approving. Then you're learning. Good. They completed another circuit of the park, stopping to greet acquaintances, to exchange pleasantries, to generally be seen together. By the time they left, Kira knew the story would be all over London by morning. The jilted Tyler girl hadn't just recovered. She'd triumphed. She'd captured the attention of one of England's most eligible and elusive dukes. As Noah drove her home through the gathering dusk, Kira felt something shift in her chest. This arrangement with Noah was supposed to be temporary, a performance lasting 4 months. But sitting beside him, watching the lamplight catch in his dark hair, feeling the warmth of his presence. This was dangerous. This was the most dangerous thing she'd ever done, and Kira had the terrible suspicion she was already in far too deep to escape unscathed. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Noah invited Kira to the season's most anticipated event, Lord Blackwood's masquerade ball. It's perfect, he explained over tea in her parlor, a ritual they'd established to maintain the appearance of courtship. The masks provide anonymity. We can speak freely without gossip monitoring our expressions. And what would we need to speak more freely about? Kira asked, though her heart had begun to race the moment he'd mentioned the ball. Noah's expression turned serious. I haven't been entirely honest with you. Kira set down her teacup carefully. Should I be concerned? That depends on your definition of concern. He stood, pacing to the window where autumn rain streaked the glass. You asked once why I helped you, why I chose you specifically for this arrangement. You said you understood what it felt like to be discarded. That's true, but it's not the whole truth. He turned back to face her. I've known who you were long before that wedding, Kira. Years before. The words hung between them, impossible and strange. That's not possible, Kira said slowly. We'd never met before that night. We hadn't been properly introduced, Noah corrected. But I saw you 5 years ago at a charity auction. You were there with your father, arguing passionately about prison reform with a group of skeptical lords. You were brilliant, fearless. You demolished their arguments with logic and compassion in equal measure. Kira's breath caught. She remembered that auction. Her father had been so proud of her that night. I was so impressed, Noah continued, that I asked my mother to discover your name. I planned to call on your father, to request an introduction. But, he paused, his expression darkening. I was engaged to Isabel then. My father insisted on the match. I couldn't pursue you, no matter how much I wanted to. Noah, Kira didn't know what to say. By the time Isabel left me, by the time I was free, you were engaged to Fry, and I thought, his laugh was bitter. I thought perhaps I was cursed to only want what I couldn't have. Then I saw you at that wedding standing alone, and I couldn't help you. Call it fate. Call it selfish opportunity. Call it whatever you like. But know this, Kira, when I proposed this arrangement, I wasn't just seeking entertainment or revenge. I was seeking you. The confession left Kira reeling. This changed everything. Nothing changed. She didn't know which. Why tell me this now, she managed. Because I'm tired of pretending. Because in 2 months, this arrangement ends, and I'm not certain I can let you go. He crossed back to her, dropping to one knee so their eyes were level. I know our agreement was 4 months. I know you're not obligated to feel anything beyond cooperation. But Kiara, I need you to know, for me, this stopped being an arrangement 3 weeks ago. Perhaps it never was. Kira's world tilted. She'd spent weeks telling herself this was temporary, that Noah's attentiveness was performance, that her growing feelings were dangerous and foolish and completely one-sided. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Then don't say anything yet. Come to the masquerade with me. Let's have one evening where we're not performing for anyone else, where we can be honest with each other. He took her hand gently. After that, if you want to end this arrangement early, I'll understand. I'll honor my promise. You'll walk away with your reputation restored and no obligations. But please give me one honest evening first. How could she refuse? How could she do anything but nod, her throat too tight for words? The Blackwood estate was transformed into something from a fairy tale. Every surface glittered with candles and crystal. Guests in elaborate masks and costumes filled the ballroom, their identities concealed by their inhibitions loosened by champagne and anonymity. Noah had sent Kiara a costume, a gown of midnight blue silk with silver embroidery that caught the light like stars. The matching mask covered the upper half of her face, transforming her into someone mysterious and alluring. When Noah arrived to collect her, wearing a black domino and a mask that emphasizes sharp cheekbones and gray eyes, Kira's breath caught. You look like a fairy tale prince, she said without thinking, and you look like every star in the sky decided to become a woman. His voice was rough with something that sounded like longing. At the ball, they danced. Not the carefully proper dances of London society, but the waltz, scandalous, intimate, intoxicating. Noah's hand at her waist burned through the silk. His gray eyes never left her face. Tell me something true, he said as they turned across the floor. Something you've never told anyone. Kira considered lying, considered deflecting. Instead, she found herself saying, I'm terrified that when this ends, I won't remember how to be myself anymore. That I'll have become so used to being the woman you created that I'll forget who Kira Tyler actually is. You couldn't forget if you tried, Noah said fiercely. You're the woman who argued about prison reform until hardened lords admitted defeat, who climbed into my carriage despite not knowing if I was a hero or villain, who faced down Georgiana Whitmore without flinching. That woman doesn't disappear just because circumstances change. Your turn, Kira said, her voice unsteady. Tell me something true. Noah was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, softly, I'm terrified you'll realize you could have anyone in London now. That you'll choose someone worthy, someone who didn't start this entire arrangement with manipulation and lies. You didn't lie to me. I lied by omission. I knew you for years and never said. I used your pain to get close to you. I'm not, he stopped, his jaw clenching. I'm not the hero you deserve, Kira. Maybe I don't want a hero, Kira heard herself say. Maybe I just want someone honest, someone real, someone who sees me not as a project to fix or a prize to win, but as a partner. Noah's eyes blazed. Kira! But whatever he was about to say was interrupted by a commotion near the ballroom entrance. The music faltered, dancers slowed, and through the crowd came a woman Kira didn't recognize. Tall, blonde, beautiful, wearing a crimson gown and a mask that barely concealed her features. Noah's entire body went rigid. No, he breathed. She can't be here. Who? Kira asked, though something in her chest already knew. Isabel, Noah said, his voice hollow. My ex-fiancée. The woman's eyes swept the ballroom and locked onto Noah with unerring accuracy. Her smile was triumphant as she began walking toward them. Your Grace, Isabel said, her voice like poisoned honey. How delightful to see you. And with Miss Tyler, how unexpected. Her eyes raked over Kira with barely concealed contempt. Though I suppose you always did have a weakness for charity cases. Noah's hand tightened on Kira's waist, protective and possessive. No. Isabel, I'd heard you were in Scotland with your husband. My late husband, Isabel corrected, her expression momentarily flickering with something that might have been genuine grief. The Earl died 6 months ago. I'm recently returned to London. A widow, an eligible widow with a title and wealth, everything Kira wasn't. I'm sorry for your loss, Noah said stiffly. Are you? Isabel stepped closer. Because I've been hearing the most fascinating rumors about you and Miss Tyler. That you've been keeping scandalously close company, that you've practically been inseparable for weeks. Her smile sharpened. One might almost think you were trying to make someone jealous. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Your imagination always was vivid, Noah said coldly. Was it your imagination when you told me you loved me? Isabel's voice dropped to something intimate, meant only for their ears. Was it imagination when you begged me not to marry Edward? Was it your imagination when you promised to wait for me, no matter how long it took? Kira's heart dropped into her stomach. Noah had never mentioned promises, never mentioned waiting. That was 3 years ago, Noah said, but his voice lacked conviction. You made your choice. I made the choice I had to make, Isabel corrected. My family was bankrupt. Edward offered security. But Noah, she placed her hand on his arm, and Kira watched him not pull away. Edward is gone now, and I'm free. As are you, it seems. Her eyes flicked to Kira dismissively, despite the current distractions. Kira is not a distraction, Noah said, finally finding steel in his voice. Isn't she? Or is she exactly what I said, a charity case you've taken up to prove you've moved on? Tell me, Miss Tyler. Isabel turned to her fully. Did His Grace tell you about me, about how we were childhood sweethearts? About how he swore no other woman would ever possess his heart? Each word was a knife, carefully placed to cause maximum damage. Lady Isabel, Kira said, proud that her voice remained steady. Whatever history you share with His Grace is between the two of you. I have no interest in competing with ghosts. Ghosts, Isabel laughed. I'm quite alive, Miss Tyler, and I've returned to claim what's mine. She walked away, leaving devastation in her wake. Noah turned to Kira, his expression anguished. Let me explain. Did you promise to wait for her? Kira asked quietly. Yes, but did you tell her no other woman would possess your heart? Noah's silence was answer enough. Kira stepped back. Out of his arms, her own heart shattering into pieces she wasn't sure could be mended. Thank you for the dance, Your Grace, she said formally. I believe I need some air. She walked away before he could stop her, before the tears could fall, before London's elite could witness her breaking. She'd been a fool. Again. Kira found refuge in the estate's conservatory, where exotic plants provided cover and the glass walls dampened the ballroom's noise. She pressed her hands against the cool glass, trying to steady her breathing, trying to understand what had just happened. Noah had known her for years, had watched her, had perhaps even cared for her. But he'd also promised himself to Isabel, had sworn his heart belonged to another woman. And now that woman was back, available and clearly expecting Noah to fulfill his promises. You handled that with remarkable grace. Kira spun to find Lady Helena standing in the conservatory doorway, her silver mask pushed up on her forehead, her expression sympathetic. Your Grace, Kira curtsied automatically. I was just running from my son. Lady Helena moved closer, her silk skirts rustling. I don't blame you. Isabel has always had impeccable timing for causing maximum damage. You know her? I nearly had her for a daughter-in-law. Thank God Edward saved me from that fate. Lady Helena's smile was sharp. Isabel Lancaster is beautiful, wealthy, titled, and utterly poisonous. She didn't love Noah. She loved his title and his devotion. The moment someone offered her something better, she discarded him without a second thought. Then why? Kira couldn't finish the question. Why did Noah promise to wait for her? Lady Helena sighed. Because my son, for all his brilliance, can be spectacularly blind when it comes to his own heart. He thought he loved Isabel. Perhaps he did, in the way young men love beautiful illusions. But that's all she ever was, an illusion. She seemed very real tonight. Did she? Or did she seem like a woman desperately clinging to a past that no longer exists? Lady Helena tilted her head. Tell me, Miss Tyler, when Isabel confronted you, what did you see in Noah's face? Kira thought back. Noah's expression had been shocked, uncomfortable, but not longing, not yearning. I saw surprise, she said slowly. Maybe anger. Not love? No, Kira admitted. Not love. Precisely, because whatever Noah felt for Isabel died the day she married another man. He's been mourning a ghost, yes, but he stopped loving the woman years ago. Lady Helena took Kira's hands in hers. What I saw in his face tonight was fear. Fear that you would believe Isabel's poison. Fear that he would lose you. But he made promises. He made foolish promises as a heartbroken young man. That doesn't mean he's obligated to honor them now. Lady Helena squeezed Kira's hands. My son has been different these past weeks, lighter, happier. He smiles, Kira, actually smiles. I haven't seen that since before Isabel destroyed him. You did that. You brought my son back to life. You can't know that our arrangement is temporary. In 2 months, my son will beg you to make it permanent, Lady Helena said firmly. I know my son. I know when he's performing and when he's genuine. With you, he's genuine. Don't let Isabel's malice destroy something real. But what if he still loves her? What if, then ask him. Lady Helena released Kira's hands. Stop running and ask him directly. You'll have your answer. Before Kira could respond, Noah burst into the conservatory, his mask discarded, his expression wild. Kira, thank God, I thought. He stopped when he saw his mother. Mother, of course you're here. I was just leaving, Lady Helena said serenely. I believe you two have matters to discuss. She swept out, leaving Kira and Noah alone among the exotic plants and growing silence. I'm sorry, Noah said immediately. About Isabel, about everything she said. Were her words lies? Kira asked quietly. No. Noah ran a hand through his hair, disheveling it further. I did promise to wait for her. I did say those things. But Kira, that was 3 years ago. I was different then. I believed in fairy tale endings and eternal love and all manner of foolishness that reality systematically destroyed. And now? Now I believe in partnership, in honesty, in choosing someone not because they're perfect or titled or wealthy, but because they make you want to be better. He crossed to her, his gray eyes intense. I believe in you, Kira. In us. Not as a performance or an arrangement, but as something real. How can I trust that? How can I trust that you're not still in love with her? Because, Noah said simply, when I looked at her tonight, I felt nothing. No longing, no regret, just exhaustion at having to relive old pain. But when I thought you might leave, when I thought I might lose you, he took her hands, his grip almost painful in its intensity. My heart stopped, Kira, completely stopped. That's how I know. Because the thought of losing Isabel hurt, yes. But the thought of losing you? That would destroy me. Tears burned Kira's eyes. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to be partners for 4 months and then part ways. I know. I'm sorry for breaking our agreement. I'm sorry for caring more than I should. I'm sorry for... Kira kissed him. She'd meant it to be brief, to stop his apologies, to quiet the panic in his voice. But the moment their lips met, something ignited between them. 3 weeks of suppressed tension, of careful distance, of pretending indifference while feeling everything. Noah's arms came around her, pulling her against him with desperate strength. Kira's hands fisted in his coat, anchoring herself as the world spun. The kiss deepened, became something raw and honest and utterly unlike the careful performances they'd been giving London society. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Noah pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you," he said, the words tumbling out like a confession. "I think I've loved you since I saw you demolish those lords 5 years ago. I think I've loved you every day since, even when I told myself it was impossible, even when you were engaged to someone else, even when it seemed like I'd never have the right to tell you. I love you, Kira Tyler, and I don't want our arrangement to end in 2 months." I love you too," Kira interrupted, laughing and crying simultaneously. "I've been trying not to, trying to protect myself, trying to remember this was temporary, but I love you, Noah, completely, hopelessly, probably unwisely." Noah's smile was radiant. "Definitely unwisely. I'm notoriously difficult. I noticed. I have enemies. I assumed. I'm controlling and manipulative and occasionally ruthless. Yes to all of that." Kira cupped his face, memorizing every detail. "But you're also kind when you think no one's watching. Protect people you care about. Brilliant and funny and surprising. And you make me feel brave, Noah. Like I can be the person I was always meant to be. You were always that person." Noah said fiercely, "I just gave you permission to show the world." They kissed again, slower this time, sweeter, full of promise rather than desperation. "So," Kira said when they finally pulled apart, "what happens now?" "Now," by him, Noah's smile turned mischievous. "Now we return to that ballroom and let Isabel see exactly how little power she has over me. And then tomorrow I call on your mother and formally request permission to court you. With real intentions this time. My mother will faint. Probably, but she'll recover. Especially when I tell her I plan to marry her daughter as soon as she'll have me." Kira's heart stopped. "Marry?" "Eventually, when you're ready. I'm not rushing you." Noah's expression turned serious. "I know this is all happening quickly. I know you have every reason to be cautious. But Kira, I want everything with you. Not a 4-month arrangement, not a temporary performance. I want a future, a real future, with arguments and compromises and morning tea and growing old together. I want..." "Yes," Kira said. Noah blinked. "Yes?" "Yes to courting me. Yes to a future. Yes to everything." Kira laughed at his shocked expression. "Did you think I'd refuse? I thought you might need time. Thought you'd want to be cautious after Tom. Tom was safe, predictable, easy." Kira took Noah's hands, lacing their fingers together. "You're none of those things. You're dangerous and complicated and probably going to drive me mad. But Noah, you're also real. You see me, the actual me, not the version I think I should be. And I see you, the man behind the ruthless Duke facade. How could I refuse that?" Noah pulled her close again, holding her like she was precious and fragile and utterly irreplaceable. "We should return to the ballroom," he murmured against her hair, "before the gossip becomes completely unmanageable." "Let them gossip." Kira didn't move from the circle of his arms. "Are you sure? Because once we walk back in there together, once Isabel sees, Kira, this will cement your position at my side. London will assume we're as good as engaged. Your reputation will be tied to mine irrevocably." Kira thought about Tom, about Georgiana, about every person who had pitied or mocked her. She thought about Isabel's poisoned words and Lady Helena's wisdom. But mostly she thought about Noah, his gray eyes, his rare smile, his fierce protectiveness. "Good," she said firmly. "Let them assume. Let them gossip. Let them watch while the jilted Kira Tyler becomes the Duchess of Ashford." Noah's smile was slow, dangerous, and absolutely devastating. Then let's go show them how thoroughly you've conquered me. Hand in hand, they walked back toward the ballroom, toward Isabel's fury and London's speculation, toward a future neither had planned but both desperately wanted, together. The return to the ballroom was everything Noah had promised and more. Every head turned as they entered, fingers still intertwined, masks discarded, their expressions leaving no doubt about what had transpired in the conservatory. The whispers exploded like fireworks. The Duke and Miss Tyler. Did you see how he's looking at her? Is that a betrothal? Isabel will be furious. They were right about the last part. Isabel Lancaster stood near the refreshment table, surrounded by admirers, her crimson gown making her impossible to miss. When she saw Noah and Kira enter together, her champagne flute stopped halfway to her lips. Her expression cycled through shock, fury, and something that might have been genuine pain before settling on cold calculation. Your Grace, she said, materializing at their side with predatory grace. Miss Tyler, how cozy you both look. Lady Lancaster, Noah said politely, but his hand tightened on Kira's. Thank you for your earlier concern, but as you can see, Miss Tyler and I are quite well. Are you? Isabel's eyes gleamed with malice. That's unfortunate, because I've just been having the most enlightening conversation with Mr. Tom Fry. Did you know, Miss Tyler, that your former fiancé is telling anyone who will listen that you begged him not to marry Miss Whitmore? That you actually cried and pleaded? Kira's face burned. She hadn't begged. She'd shed private tears, yes, but she'd never. He's lying, Noah said coldly. Perhaps. Isabel's smile was razor sharp. But who do you think London will believe? A duke's current infatuation? Or a respected gentleman with a wealthy wife to corroborate his story? It was genius in its cruelty. Tom was undermining everything Noah had helped her build, turning her from dignified victim to desperate woman, from intriguing mystery to pathetic fool. It doesn't matter what they believe, Kira heard herself say, surprised by the steel in her voice. Let Tom lie. Let them all believe what they want. I know the truth. Noah knows the truth. That's sufficient. How noble, Isabel purred, but nobility doesn't protect you from social ruin, Miss Tyler. By tomorrow morning, you'll be a laughingstock again. And His Grace, she turned to Noah with false sympathy. Well, even dukes can be forgiven for being temporarily fooled by a manipulative woman. When you tire of this farce, Noah, I'll be waiting. We both know where you truly belong. She walked away in a rustle of crimson silk, leaving chaos in her wake. Around them, guests were already murmuring, speculating, choosing sides. The damage was done. By morning, Tom's lies would be halfway across London. We need to stop this, Kira said urgently. We need to— No! Noah's voice was firm. We're not running. We're not hiding. We're going to end this right now. Before Kira could ask what he meant, Noah signaled to the orchestra. The music stopped. Conversations died. Every eye in the ballroom was fixed on the Duke of Ashford. Ladies and gentlemen, Noah said, his voice carrying easily across the sudden silence, I apologize for the interruption, but I find I must address some recent speculation. Kira's heart hammered. What was he doing? It's been brought to my attention, Noah continued, that certain individuals have been spreading stories about Miss Tyler. Stories designed to humiliate her. Stories that are, to be blunt, complete fabrications. Tom's face was drained of color. Georgiana looked ready to bolt. I know this, Noah said, his gray eyes sweeping the crowd, because I've made it my business to investigate. You see, when you care about someone, you protect them, even from malicious gossip disguised as truth. He turned to Kiera, his expression softening. Miss Tyler did not beg Mr. Fry to reconsider. She didn't plead or cry or behave in any manner unbecoming. I know this because I had Mr. Fry's former servants interviewed, because I paid for affidavits from everyone present during the dissolution of their engagement, because I ensure that anyone important to me is protected from exactly this sort of slander. The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Furthermore, Noah said, his voice turning dangerous, I will not tolerate anyone attempting to harm Miss Tyler's reputation. Not Mr. Fry, not Lady Lancaster, not anyone present here tonight. Because as of this moment, I am formally declaring my intention to court Miss Tyler with the explicit goal of making her my Duchess. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Kira's knees went weak. Any insult to her, Noah continued, any slander, any attempt to diminish her in any way will be considered a personal insult to me, and I'm certain everyone here understands how I respond to personal insults. The threat was unmistakable. Noah's reputation for destroying enemies was legend. He turned back to Kiera, took her hand, and dropped to one knee in front of 300 witnesses. Kiera Tyler, he said, his voice gentler now, meant only for her despite the audience. I know this isn't how you imagined being proposed to. I know I'm doing this all wrong, publicly and impulsively and possibly disastrously. But I also know that I love you, that I want to build a life with you, that I want to wake up every morning knowing you're mine and I'm yours. So I'm asking, in front of all these people who have doubted you, dismissed you, and underestimated you, will you marry me? Will you be my Duchess? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you are, without question, the most remarkable woman in England? The ballroom held its collective breath. Kira looked down at Noah, this impossible, infuriating, wonderful man who had rescued her from humiliation and taught her to be brave. She thought about Tom's lies and Isabel's poison and every person who had ever made her feel less than enough. Then she thought about Noah's rare smile, his fierce protectiveness, his complete faith in her even when she didn't have faith in herself. Yes, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. I'll marry you. The ballroom erupted in applause and cheers. Noah stood, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her thoroughly enough to scandalize the matrons and delight everyone else. When they finally broke apart, Noah was grinning like he'd won a war. That went well, he murmured. You're insane, Kira said, laughing and crying simultaneously. Probably, is that a problem? Not even remotely. Across the ballroom, Isabel had gone pale. Tom looked sick. Georgiana was whispering frantically to her mother, but Kira didn't care. Let them stew in their fury. Let them rage against the unfairness of the woman they'd dismissed becoming a duchess. She'd already won. 6 months later, Kira stood in the same cathedral where Tom had married Georgiana, wearing a gown of ivory silk and Brussels lace that had required 3 seamstresses and 8 weeks to create. Nervous? Eleanor asked, adjusting Kira's veil for the 4th time. Terrified, Kira admitted. What if I trip? What if I forget my vows? What if you marry the man who loves you desperately and spend the rest of your life being absurdly happy? Eleanor squeezed her hand. Kira, you're not walking to your doom. You're walking toward your future. I know. It's just... Kira looked at herself in the mirror. The woman reflected back was almost unrecognizable from the one who'd sat alone at Tom's wedding 6 months ago. She looked confident, radiant, happy. You've changed, Eleanor said softly, reading her thoughts. You finally look like who you always were inside. Noah did that. No, Eleanor smiled. Noah just helped you remember. You did the rest yourself. Outside, the cathedral bells began ringing, signaling it was time. Kira's mother appeared, tears already streaming down her face. My darling girl, you look like a princess. I'm about to be a duchess, Mother. It's slightly different. Don't be clever. It's your wedding day. You're allowed to be sentimental. Mrs. Tyler took Kira's hands. Your father would have been so proud of you. Not because you're marrying a duke, but because you chose someone who makes you happy, someone who sees how extraordinary you are. Kira's throat tightened with emotion. I miss him. He's here, Mrs. Tyler said firmly, in spirit if not in body. Now come. Your groom is probably pacing a hole in the altar stones. She was right. When Kira reached the cathedral doors and they swung open, she could see Noah standing at the altar, Marcus Blackwood at his side. Noah looked magnificent in his formal attire. But what stole her breath was his expression when he saw her. Pure, unguarded joy. As the organ began the wedding march, Kira started down the aisle on her mother's arm. Every pew was packed. Half of London society had shown up to witness this marriage, including several people who'd mocked her 6 months ago and were now scrambling to be in her good graces. But Kira had eyes only for Noah. When she reached the altar, Noah took her hands, his gray eyes shining. "You're late," he murmured, "by 30 seconds. 30 seconds, too long. I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind." "Never," Kira whispered. The ceremony was beautiful. The priest's words washed over her, familiar and profound. But what Kira would remember forever was the moment Noah said his vows, his voice steady and certain. "I, Noah Sebastian Tucker, take you, Kira Rose Tyler, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you in triumph and disaster, in wealth and in poverty, in and in sorrow. I promise to see you, truly see you, every day of our lives together. I promise to make you laugh when you want to cry, to challenge you when you need to grow, and to stand beside you. You are my partner, my equal, my love, now and forever." Kira's vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. "I, Kira Rose Tyler, take you, Noah Sebastian Tucker, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you not because you're perfect, but because you're real. I promise to be brave when you need me to be, honest when it's hard, and absolutely loyal always. You taught me to choose myself, Noah, and in doing that I chose you, now and forever." When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Noah kissed her with enough passion to make several matrons gasp and the younger guests cheer. "Ready, Duchess?" Noah whispered against her lips. "Ready," Kira confirmed. They walked back down the aisle together, past Lady Helena, who was openly crying, past Tom and Georgiana, who looked miserable, past Isabel, who was conspicuously absent, past everyone who had ever doubted them. Outside, the sun broke through London's perpetual clouds, bathing them in golden light. "Happy?" Noah asked as their carriage pulled away from the cathedral. "Deliriously," Kira said, then paused. "Is that Tom running after our carriage?" Sure enough, Tom Fry was indeed chasing them, waving frantically. "Should we stop?" Kira asked. "Absolutely not." Noah knocked on the ceiling, and their driver urged the horses faster. "I've spent 6 months establishing that you're far too good for him. I'm not about to let him tarnish your wedding day with whatever pathetic speech he's prepared." Kira laughed, watching Tom's desperate figure recede in the distance. "You're terrible. You married me anyway." "I did, didn't I?" Kira leaned against her new husband, her heart full to bursting. "No regrets?" "None whatsoever." Noah pulled her close. "Though I should warn you, Duchess, being married to me won't be easy. I have political enemies, business rivals, and at least 3 vengeful ex-partners." "Only 3? I'm disappointed." 4 if you count Isabel." "I don't. She's not worth counting." Kira tilted her face up for a kiss. "Besides, I've discovered I'm rather good at being a duke's wife. Turns out all those years arguing about social reform prepared me perfectly for navigating high society's battlefield." "You're magnificent," Noah said with complete sincerity. "I'm practical." "You're both. It's one of the many reasons I love you." As their carriage rattled through London toward their new life together, Kira thought about that night 6 months ago, about standing alone in a ballroom, humiliated and hurting, convinced her life was over. She'd been so wrong. Her life hadn't been ending that night. It had begun, and this new life, this impossible, wonderful, chaotic life with Noah, was better than anything she could have imagined. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me, for choosing me, for teaching me that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead to the best." Noah's smile was radiant. "Thank you for being brave enough to take my hands that night, for trusting me, for loving me despite my considerable flaws." "They're not flaws," Kira corrected. "They're quirks, and I happen to find them charming." "You're biased." "I'm your wife. I'm allowed to be biased." "My wife?" Noah tested the words, his expression wondering. "I like the sound of that." "So do I." They kissed again as the carriage turned toward Ashford Manor, toward their future, toward everything they'd built from the ashes of their separate heartbreaks. Behind them, London gossiped and speculated and retold the story of the jilted Kira Tyler who'd captured a duke's heart. But Kira wasn't listening anymore. She'd stopped being defined by other people's narratives the moment Noah had offered his hand and asked her to be brave, and she'd been brave ever since. 1 year later, Lady Helena Tucker hosted a garden party at the Ashford estate. Among the guests were Lord and Lady Blackwood, Miss Eleanor Marsh, now courting a promising young architect, and even Mrs. Fry née Whitmore, whose marriage had reportedly become as cold as her heart. Tom did not attend. He and Georgiana had separated 6 months after their wedding, and he'd reportedly fled to America to escape his debts. Kira stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens, one hand resting on her slightly rounded stomach, watching Noah laugh at something Marcus had said. He looked younger than when she'd met him. Lighter, happy. Thinking about the wedding? Lady Helena appeared at her elbow. Actually, I was thinking about it before the wedding. About that night at the Whitmore reception when I was so sure my life was ending. And now? Now I realize it was ending, but endings aren't always bad. Kira smiled at her mother-in-law. Sometimes things have to fall apart so better things can come together. Very philosophical. Marriage to my son is making you wise. Marriage to your son is making me tired, Kira corrected. He's exhausting. He has opinions about everything. So do you, my dear. That's why you're perfect for each other. Noah caught sight of them and began walking over, his expression softening when he saw Kira. There you are, he said, sliding an arm around her waist. I've been looking for you. I was right here. You were too far away. He kissed her temple. How are you feeling? Do you need to sit? Should I fetch you water? Noah. Kira placed her hand over his, stilling his fussing. I'm pregnant, not dying. I can stand in the garden without medical intervention. But the baby is perfectly fine, as am I. She looked up at her impossible, wonderful husband. Though I appreciate the concern, Your Grace. Duke Mother is going to be unbearable, Lady Helena predicted cheerfully. He'll probably wrap you in cotton wool and forbid you from leaving your chambers. He can try, Kira said. I have a prison reform committee meeting next week that I have no intention of missing. Noah groaned. Of course you do, because why would my pregnant wife rest when she could instead argue with hardened lords about penal reform? Your pregnant wife, Kira corrected, is perfectly capable of both growing as a human and advocating for social change. Women have been doing both for millennia. She has a point, Lady Helena said. She always has a point. It's infuriating. But Noah was smiling as he said it, his gray eyes full of love and exasperation in equal measure. From across the garden, someone called Noah's name. He sighed. Duty calls. Don't move. I'll be right back. I'll be here, Kira promised. She watched him walk away, this man who had saved her from humiliation and taught her to save herself. This man who had seen her at her lowest moment and decided she was worth fighting for. This man who had become her partner, her love, her future. You know, Lady Helena said softly, I don't think I've ever seen my son happier. Good, Kira said, because I've never been happier either. And it was true. 6 months ago, standing alone in that ballroom, she could never have imagined this life, this happiness. This man loved her fiercely and challenged her constantly and made every day an adventure. But then again, the best things in life are rarely the things we imagine. They're the things we're brave enough to choose. And Kira had chosen bravery. She'd chosen love. She'd chosen Noah. And in doing so, she'd chosen herself. Finally. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end of this story. We truly hope Kira and Noah's journey touched your heart as much as it touched ours. From humiliation to triumph, from heartbreak to healing, their story reminds us that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead to the best. If you felt moved, surprised, or simply entertained by this tale of revenge, redemption, and romance, please consider liking this video, sharing it with someone who loves passionate romance stories, leaving a comment below with your favorite moment. We absolutely love reading your thoughts. Did you cry when Noah proposed in front of everyone? Did you cheer when Kira chose bravery? Did you hate Isabel as much as we did? Tell us everything. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Sure Romance Studio, we invite you to join our growing family of romance lovers. Your encouragement keeps us inspired to bring you more stories filled with passion, plot twists, and unforgettable characters. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next emotional journey. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for supporting us. You make these stories possible. At the end of this video, another beautiful story awaits you. Click and discover more romance that will make your heart race. Until our next tale of love and redemption, stay passionate, stay romantic, stay with Sure Romance Studio. Thank you for being here.